1914. The world was swallowed by a fire unlike any before. The First World War, humanity's first global war. The front lines stretched not only across Europe, but from Africa to Asia. The earth was soaked in blood, the skies filled with smoke. But the greatest destruction took place inside human hearts. Chapter 1. The Cowards and the Executions. This war didn't only create heroes, it created the so-called cowards. Some soldiers, broken by trauma, simply couldn't go on fighting. Doctors called it shell shock, the shock of constant bombardment. But the commanders didn't understand. To them, fear meant weakness. To hesitate was betrayal. More than 300 British soldiers were executed for cowardice, but their only crime was being human. Chapter 2. Dog tags and lost identities. The quietest witness of war hung around every soldier's neck, the dog tag. A small piece of metal carrying a man's name, his identity, his last connection to home. Yet millions were buried without one. Some tags were lost, others shattered beyond recognition. And so, on countless graves, one phrase remains carved in stone: unknown soldier. Chapter 3. The Lost Lovers. Behind every fallen soldier, someone waited. A fiancée, a wife, a mother. Love letters became the only light in those dark days. But most never reached their destination. Some were found years later, yellowed, fragile, unopened. One French woman's story still lingers in memory. Jeanne wrote to her fiancé every week for 5 years. No reply ever came. Then, one morning in November 1918, the day of the armistice, a letter arrived at her door. It was too late. Chapter 4. The Youngest Soldier, John Condon. And then, there was one of the smallest voices of the war, John Condon. A boy from Ireland who went to the front in 1915, killed in Belgium during the Battle of Ypres. Official records say he was 14, some claim 16, but his uniform hung loose on his shoulders, and his face still carried the softness of childhood. He wrote to his mother, "I'll be home soon." He never returned. When the gas shells fell that morning, they found him only by the dog tag around his neck. Years later, his grave was marked. Private John Condon, age 14. Today, visitors still leave small toy soldiers and letters at his tomb in Ypres. Because he wasn't just a soldier, he was a child who lost his life before he ever lived it. Chapter 5. When the War Fell Silent. November 11th, 1918. At 11 o'clock, the guns went silent, and the world fell into a deep, uneasy quiet. But that silence wasn't peace, it was grief. The soldiers who returned home still heard the bombs in their dreams. Some never spoke again. Some never smiled. The war had ended, but inside them, it still raged on. Chapter 6. The Shadow of the First Global War. This wasn't just Europe's war, it was the world's. Thousands from Africa, India, and the Ottoman lands died in countries they had never seen before. Women stepped into factories for the first time, empires crumbled, and borders were redrawn. But humanity was never the same. An entire generation was lost, and their silence became the warning for the next great catastrophe. World War II. Silent screams. When the First World War ended, everyone thought peace had arrived. But what truly came was silence. A silence filled with 1,000 screams. You can still hear them in the cold metal of a dog tag, in the yellowed paper of a letter, in the single word etched on a gravestone: remember. Heroism isn't always charging into fire. Sometimes it's carrying your pain in silence.